This video is going to be my first real ride review of the Ibis Mojo. So I did my first look where I showed the bike. I'm in the North Georgia mountains. I'm at the Jake Mountain Trailhead. I'm going to ride Bull Mountain, Jake Mountain on the Ibis Mojo, and I'll just talk about my thoughts of the bike. Let's go. So this is actually only my second ride on this bike. The first one was kind of a tune-up ride on the local trails to get all the settings like I want them. Saddle height, all that. So that when I get up here, I'm not fidgeting around with that stuff. So to me, there's kind of two schools of thought on when you do a bike review. One is you need to ride the bike for a long time before you review it, which I understand. I do that on some of mine. The other one is the first time you really get on it, if you've been riding for a while, is when you're going to notice most of the attributes of the bike. And that's why I like to do these kind of first like ride-along reviews. Oh, this feels good. Well, I'm going to hold off. I got to do a long descent first before I really talk about how the bike feels. But yeah, so being that, you know, I've been on my personal bikes for a while, getting on this demo and taking it out on the first ride, I really start to notice the attributes of the bike right off the bat. Why did the mountain biker cross the road? To stay on the single track. That's the worst joke in the history of bike reviews. All right, starting the Bull Mountain Trail. We've got a lot of climbing to do. About 5 miles before you get to the top. A little bit of downhill. It's mainly uphill. So let me talk about how this bike climbs. This DW Link suspension has like no unwanted pedal bob. I'm leaving the shock in the middle setting, which is what I like to do, unless it's like a fire road that's totally smooth. But this trail has some roots and rocks that I need traction. But even in the middle setting, it's so firm when you pedal. And then it does release really well when you hit a rock or a root to give you that traction. During this review, I'll talk a little bit about 27.5 versus 29, because I would imagine that if any of you out there are considering this bike, you may also be considering the Ripley, which is the 29er trail bike from Ibis. And I demoed the alloy version of that bike and loved it. So as I'm climbing, what I'm noticing is it is harder to get over those big roots on a steep uphill. Now, the nice thing about the 27.5, even when climbing, you can just move this bike around the trail really easily. I like the geometry so far. Really good for climbing. I'll tell you what I think of it for descending, but it's not too slack. Like, I don't feel like the front wheel is wandering around. But like, here's a root garden that it's just easier on the 29. Like I said, you can kind of go around stuff a little bit easier on the 27.5 if you have to. That being said, it does feel good the way you can just throw it around the trail. That's the beauty of 27.5. It just feels so good on the trail as far as agility. 1 mile done on the climb, 4 to go. So far, so good climbing on this bike. All right, serious root garden right here. See what this bike does. Oh yeah, I mean, it'll do it. It's not quite as good as a 29 over stuff like that, but these are some 2.6 tires, so they do have some good grip. Another thing that helps this bike climb is the steeper seat tube angle. I almost forgot about it because I've become so accustomed to it on modern trail bikes, but it does put you more forward. I'm gonna say something here that I've never heard anybody say before, and that is, on flatter trails like my local trails, I didn't care for the steeper seat tube angle on a 27.5 because I feel like I'm pitched forward more when I'm in the saddle riding cross country trails kind of fast. Whereas on my 29ers, I feel like the steeper seat tube angle, like on my Transition Spur and Sentinel and Niners that I've ridden, I didn't mind it. So yeah, I've never really heard anybody say that, but again, on the 27.5 bike, I felt like my weight was pitched forward more than I would have liked on a cross country trail. Now, going downhill when you're out of the saddle, it doesn't matter. It's when you're pedaling on some fast XC trails, that steeper seat tube angle puts me a little more forward than I would have liked. Oh, and I'll also say that on the Ripley that I demoed that has a pretty similar seat tube angle, since that's a 29, it didn't bother me on the XC trails. So it's not just related to Ibis. I think it's more related to the 27.5 bikes. Got to stop at the old truck. This would be a good place for a thumbnail photo for this review. I'm at the top, so I'm gonna get a bite to eat, put on my elbow pads for the descent. So as far as climbing, this bike climbs so well. This last part that I did was super steep, and the front wheel, I was just able to precisely put it where I wanted it to go. Definitely did not feel like the front end was wandering around. Again, my hands are a little lower. You know, since it's a 27.5, it just feels like the bars are lower to the ground. All right, I'm gonna chill out for a little bit and then the descent. All right, so I definitely opened up the shock for this descent. Which, by the way, I left the shock in the middle setting, and I had a few downhills coming up here, and it felt fine. Like this DW Link suspension is more plush than I remember DW Link being. I had a few DW Link bikes in the past, and they weren't the plushest bike in my fleet, but this DW Link definitely feels more plush. I like it. Man, this bike feels so good. This has a nice balance of being flickable without being sketchy. Really nice geometry on the descents on this bike. bike has the perfect amount of travel for this trail. 140 in the front, 130 in the back. If it were 29, I'd say about 10 millimeters less, but it's perfect for this trail. Have not hit anything that needed more travel so far, and I've hit some, you know, fairly good rock gardens. All right, I'll go ahead and wrap up this video as I make my way back to the parking lot. That was a good ride, about 3.5 hours. So I really like this bike, as you can tell. I pretty much said everything I need to say so far, except I want to say one more thing, that the frame is really stiff laterally, which I really like. And what that means is when you're going through rock gardens, especially at high speeds, the bike just doesn't get thrown off its line. It just holds its line really well. So, all right. I'll follow this video up with some more reviews on this bike, so check out the channel later on for that. Thanks for watching.